Howdy, y'all. This is Market Explainer, America's #1 business news podcast. What we do every week on this show, we break down 4 important business news stories. Today, we're going to talk about the top 4 companies to invest in the metaverse space. Then we're going to talk about Samsung expanding into Austin. We're going to talk about General Electric and Johnson & Johnson breaking up. And then we're going to talk about getting arrested for renting a car. Before we do any of that, I want to tell you about our sponsor for the first segment, which is our very own Patreon. Starting on episode 51, our full-length video episodes will only be available on Patreon. Patreon.com/marketexplainer and marketexplainer.com.
Yep.
Go to both of those places. You can get more information about our other sponsors. And as I said, the full-length video episode. The clips will still be coming out on our channel, and the audio will still be coming out in full Market Explainer feed, and Market Explainer to go will still have our clips. So this first story, you ready to jump in, big man?
I am. We're going to get into that territory where Danny doesn't always know what he's talking about, so that's always fun for me.
That's not true, and that's why you're not even a full co-host of this show. You're the junior vice assistant, traveling secretary of the co-host.
Yes. So I sent you a story from Jim Cramer that is, according to Jim Cramer, which we all know Jim Cramer, right? And Mad Money and
blowhard.
Yeah, and I'm not a huge fan, to be honest with you. I've never been a big fan of not only how he does his business, but even his picks and how he goes about them. Again, my personal opinion, not market explainer, but not a big fan. But because I think I find him too safe. I like risk. When risk is intelligent risk, I think there's where, to me, and this is a great example of that. The story was, go ahead.
On the other hand, I prefer stupid risk. And I've currently bet the farm on a lot of things.
Danny does enjoy stupid risk, and we have this conversation all the time, but he's going to do what he's going to do.
That's correct, because I'm betting on myself. And the stupid risk always has worked, but right now the stupid risk is really, really down.
Well, so back to the story. So I sent him an article that came out last week that was Jim Cramer, because obviously everybody's talking about, since Facebook went meta, they're talking about the metaverse and the billions of dollars that Facebook is putting into it. So it's become this hot topic for everybody to talk about. And Jim Cramer came out with what he considers the 4 best companies or best ways to invest in what will become the metaverse. Right. I do not, and I sent it to Danny with the idea of, let's talk about these 4 things and whether we agree or disagree with them and how it actually has to do with the metaverse. And again, I think this is another example of Jim Cramer not understanding something and making a blanket above board play.
So these picks are so blue chip and so safe. I, as an investor, and I'm an investor in a lot of different sectors. Here's the one thing I'm always looking for: asymmetric returns. I'm trying to not get people are like, I'm going to get 8% return if I put my money into this. Very safe. I don't care about that. Show me 50% returns on a coin named after a dog. It's an invisible line of code floating in space, and it has the picture of a dog on it, and it's worth $1 bajillion. Give me that. I don't want none of this metaverse. None of this safe stuff. Show me a pink sheet stock where I have to pay a small fortune to just buy it from my broker.
You're looking for the home runs and stuff like that.
Every time, that's what I'm looking for.
But there's a balance, right? There's a balance. You can be, look, Warren Buffett invests in high-risk stuff throughout his career. He just balances it out with blue chip type stuff, right? So he's like, all right, I'm going to spend 10% over here, but I'm going to put 90% over here. And that 10% may outdo this 90% if it hits, if it whatever. So it's about, so let's go through these. Of course, his number 1 pick is Meta, what Facebook parent company became, which again is a very safe play. We know that they're investing billions of dollars to try and come up with its metaverse.
I am going to take the opposing position and say this is not a safe play. I have thought the Facebook stock, now Meta, was stupid from the very beginning and made absolutely no sense. When Facebook went public at a $52 billion value, the business broke even, blowing through $1 billion a year. And I don't ever think it's going to, but it's different now, but I don't think the stock is ever going to be, I don't get it. But for people who invest in stocks, it's not about growing their wealth, it's about maintaining their wealth. And this could be a good way to do it.
I think it's both. I mean, look, this is a safe bet if Facebook is able to do what it thinks it's able to do. And they have the money to invest in building almost anything. The downside, though, is they're going about it in the metaverse, if it truly is Web 3.0, right, is the thought process is one of the things that's made the internet great is it's almost like it's what they call it, open source, right? Its ability to grow unmitigatedly.
Facebook's metaverse is the boomer metaverse. It's for boomers. And these are not the boomers are not the people who are going to be plugging their consciousness into the internet. Okay? So it's an investment for boomers who will never use the product. So
well, there's an argument to be made that they're not even sure. They're actually, I've read several articles over this holiday week that they're not even sure that the young folks will plug into this metaverse. That there's a whole argument of the rejection of Web 3.0, whether it's a necessary step from the younger generation.
So the younger generation is currently buying up every panel and conversion van and retired U-Haul van to turn it into a tiny house so they can go live in nature.
But that's my point. If they're not, you see what I'm saying? So I think Facebook is a safe bet if it accomplishes what everybody thinks it's going to accomplish, just because of the sheer dollars they have to throw at it, right?
And if that was correct, that thinking was correct, they have the money. Blockbuster wouldn't be like, go ask a 21-year-old what is Blockbuster. They don't.
That is a valid point, and which is why I'm not buying. I'm not buying Meta because, again, I think the return on your investment, even if it does accomplish it, isn't 10 times. You know what I mean? It's not 20 times. It's not 30 times.
It is the safe play for boomers. Now, the next one is, and there is one out of these four that I actually do like. The next one is Roblox. And if you have kids or young adults, you probably are familiar with the company Roblox. If you have a young adult in your home that plays Roblox, they won't be leaving. So you should make this investment. You have money to continue to buy them Cheetos.
Well, see, Roblox successfully did two things that, again, Meta's never going to do. They, one, already have an existing structure of an economy, right? Of ways to monetize ads and games and things like this. Right. They've successfully created that. And two, their entire platform is open source. You and I can go make a brand new Roblox game, put it out there for everybody to find and use and do the different things and create our own economic system within that game for absolutely free. You and I could literally go learn their stuff. So Roblox already has a system in place. They already have an audience. And the idea is, as technology rolls down, that it easily plugs into the Roblox universe.
Right. And that they probably have, having built this open source system, can take the metaverse and take the game out of it. Just have the universe and whatever.
Well, they've already designed, and again, having your own audience that literally plays within their virtual world they've already created. It's just not through a, you know what I mean, 3-dimensional lens. They could easily carry over their existing platform.
Right.
If the Oculus, for example, if the Oculus was there and it's not yet. Right? It's not yet, right? The Oculus and 3D glasses. If they were there, you could already plug it into the Roblox universe and it would function because it's a 3D environment already.
Right. And so the third one is NVIDIA. Now, this one I like for a lot of different reasons. And one of the reasons that I like it is we're in a moment where we're understanding how important, and we're going to talk about this next, how important semiconductors or microchips are to our future economy. And they are a semiconductor manufacturer. And that's why I like it as an investment. But again, do I think it's an investment that's going to deliver asymmetric returns? No.
Well, it's a hardware play, right? It's a hardware play on what is needed to create what we're eventually going to have.
And for whatever reason, the marketplace does not value hardware the same way it does software. And it's a little interesting to me that hardware doesn't get the same kind of attention, because it's like, hey, you need this. You need this like hardware. But I think part of it is the capital intensivity it takes, capital intensive business, right? You have to actually make this stuff, where software is some nerd in his great grandmother's basement is just going tappity tap 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 tappity tap tap, launches a new Roblox server, and it's asymmetrical for the people who own the business. The stock moves a little slower. But out of all these four, I like Nvidia the most. I think they are going to matter more in the future.
See, I want to agree with you, and I really do. However, the problem with hardware in itself, the reason it doesn't get the same fanfare, right, as whatever, is there's more risk involved in hardware, in that the technology changes so quickly. And when you're creating something like a microchip, by the time you put it into mass production, it's already behind the technology that is currently. So there's a lot of, and how many of these chips am I going to make knowing that they're not going to be, right, the highest technology and demand? And we have this when we talk about video graphics cards and why they become in demand so high and then go low when mass production and then high, and they ride this roller coaster because everybody out there guessing on we should make this number of this graphics card and this one and that one. They're all guessing, right? Because the way demand ebbs and flows. So when you talk about hardware in computers and electronics and the way things function, there's so much of that is controlled by demand.
Right.
And I'm guessing on supply.
Right. And if you make a bad piece of hardware like Samsung did however many years ago with their Note that the oopsie exploded.
Sure, exactly.
It's not the same as putting out a bad piece of software.
No.
Because I put out a bad piece of software, I drop an OTA, an over-the-air update, and then it's stalled. Drop a bad piece of hardware and your batteries are going pop, pop, pop on the airplane. That's different.
Yeah, you create 5 million bad chips, and all of a sudden you're recalling 500,000 cars, or you know what I mean, or whatever. So I think there's inherently more risk, and the technology changes so quickly, and there's so much demand on them getting the numbers right as far as supply and demand. I think that's why, which is why there's not a whole bunch of chip manufacturers out there. There's not a whole bunch of people making that hardware, whether it's servers, whether, you know what I mean, whatever that may be. But I do like the hardware play. You're not going to get the metaverse that everybody wants, or even moving forward, the cars everybody wants, everything, without your hardware companies keeping up. So I do like that.
That's why I think out of these four, and the fourth one being Unity, video game development firm. I don't know anything about Unity, but you're a big nerd, so tell us about Unity.
Well, so Unity, most people know, if you know Unity, and most people won't, which is probably why it's my favorite of the four plays, is because if you don't know about it, it's probably a great investment. If people don't know about it, your average person, it's probably a great investment, because they're basically a gaming software, like Epix is a gaming software, or Steam, if you know that. Unity is a gaming availability software where they take other people's games and make them available to people through one open source.
They're a distribution.
Right, they're a distribution network, but they also do a lot of 3D rendering stuff, which is how they were originally created. So they're already doing the 3D rendering. They've worked with car manufacturers. I sent you an article about how they were using not Unity specifically, but a company like them was partnering with an electric company, a car company, and you sent it back saying that you would never drive one of these because they use the 3D mapping technology. So LiDAR. LiDAR, and Unity is already doing that. Here's why I like it, is because of their technology that they currently own in the 3D software space,
right?
If they are able to leverage that in a partnership that gets them to, because really we don't know what's going to eventually take off. Think what was it, HD VHS versus or Blu-ray versus DVD, or all these technology, HDMI versus the 5 cables, aux cables, wherever those were. We don't know which technology is going to be the one that takes hold, that becomes the standard. The Facebook, like Facebook became, right? The standard of social media is what it became.
Well, before there's Blu-ray, there was another competitor. I think it was HDD. I think that.
Yeah, I think it was HD, but Blu-ray won out. Why, right? HDMI versus the other ones. The other 5 cables were actually superior product, but HDMI won out for whatever reason. It was 1 cable versus 5, right? Whatever. Right. The point, though, is we don't always know which technology is going to be the one that becomes the standard, and that's what all of these companies are trying to become. So if Unity, here's my point, though, to Danny's point, he's been making this entire article, is Unity has the largest upside if it becomes the standard or becomes one of these standards. It has the largest upside.
Yeah. Hold on. I'm looking up the stock right now to see. What does it trade at was my question.
I didn't put that in the story right here, what it's currently trading at.
$180.
Okay, so compare that to Meta or anything like that, where it's still a small company. The reason it's that high, it hasn't split, I don't think, at all in its history. So it's prime for a split to create more float, to get more investors, right, and that kind of stuff. So I mean, you're looking at an index. Some of the stuff that I put out there, or that I not put out there, but was read this week, is you're talking about if it becomes one of the standards, the estimation is on the light side of 40 times ratio.
Oh, okay. That could be
versus what you're talking about Meta, according again to these estimates, right? Again to these estimates, if it accomplishes what it thinks it's accomplished, you're talking about 1.2 times. 1.2 times versus a 40 times opportunity.
Yeah, no, so that is more along the lines of the asymmetric investment that I was talking about earlier, which is what I'm looking for to invest. And that's because the reason I say that is because I'm a gambler at heart. I never spent a lot of time in casinos gambling, but at heart, I love it. And here's the thing. It gives me so much anxiety. Fun kind of anxiety, right? At least that's what I tell myself. But whenever I look up my portfolio when it's down $6,000 in the last week, it go down more, and I could keep living with my parents. Nonetheless.
But look, these are definitely four that obviously are in the run for the metaverse. Yes. However, again, I think they're all ultimately safe-ish bets, which is what Jim Cramer does. I don't think I think there are a billion other ways. I've sent you 2 or 3 articles in the last week about land ownership in the metaverse. And so those are much more obviously riskier bets, but there's a billion ways to invest in this metaverse. Let me just
close this segment story by saying this. The more I've spent time investing, the more I've realized it's good to buy things that I believe in and things that I like, but it's also good to try and forecast trends and go, hey, make that little switch in my brain and go, if I was a stupid person, what'd I do, right? Because there was people who made money on Beanie Babies or making money on NFT, and who are making money flipping virtual land.
Right.
And you can say whatever you want, but at the end of the day, that's real money.
Right. Well,
I don't have to believe in anything to go, well, if it's green, if it turns a profit, I don't care. I have a friend who thinks carbon credits are stupid. Huge investor in carbon credit because other people believe and other people are buying into it.
Right. Here, and again, we'll close out this story, but if you had the time and energy, and this is something that seems interesting to you, I would encourage you, much on the Gary Vee thing 4 or 5 months ago about learning about NFTs, learning about blockchain. If these are things that interest you, go out and research what Web 3.0 is supposed to be, metaverse, NFT, blockchain. These all go hand in hand in the future.
There's a lot of good free information out there. If someone wants you to sign up for a course so you can learn their strategy, don't bother.
Yeah, I wouldn't waste money on it. But again, time and effort. The information, everything you need to know how to create an NFT, everything that you want to learn about Web 3.0 and the metaverse. This is all free information that's out there. Just go find it, locate it. It's unbelievably easy to create an NFT. There is an expense. The cost of creating those things have gone through the roof because of how they're done. However, learning these things could be a great skill to have and side hustle, money-making ability moving forward with a little effort on the learning part on your side. That's all I'm saying.
Correct. We're going to move on to the next segment, but before we do that, I want to tell you about our sponsor, Acre Gold. Acre Gold is a timeless, thoughtful, and long-term investment. Is the money of kings, my friend. It's physical. Unlike what we just talked about, it's real. You can hold it. You can chew it. Don't do that. You can start investing in gold today by setting up an account with Acre Gold by clicking our link down in the description down below. And what you'll do is you'll make a small monthly payment every month, and you'll accumulate enough money in your account. They're going to do something wild, people. They're going to send you gold. The address that you give them. And 2.5 grams of gold is a great place to start, or a great place for a seasoned investor to grow their gold portfolio. That's Acre Gold. You can get our link down in the description down below. Let's talk about Samsung. It is building a $17 billion chip manufacturing plant in the great Republic of Texas. I don't ever say state because Republic. One day, my people, fellow Texans and I, we will be free. And I won't get into that now, but
because he knows it's not true. But anyway,
Exit 2024, baby.
Here's what
they're building it out in east of Austin in a city called Taylor. Here's the problem I have with that. When I moved to Austin in 2014, I could have bought up all of Taylor, Texas for $18. Okay? I could have bought the whole thing.
I don't know about $18, but yes, you could have definitely bought up Taylor, Texas, by a lot. Here's what I didn't know. This is actually, because that price tag $17 billion, right?
Right.
That investment makes it the largest direct foreign investment in Texas ever.
Really?
In the history. Like that $17 billion price tag. Plant? It doesn't matter. No, they didn't spend that much money. So for a little place like Taylor,
literal trucks that you can drive though.
Well, here's the deal. Taylor is in the central Texas area. They might as well have just said Austin, right, in these news articles, because they keep saying Taylor and nobody knows where Taylor is. Taylor could be up north, to the east, to the west. Nobody knows if you don't live in Texas, right?
And then there's Tyler, Texas. That's East
Texas. That's Northeast Texas. But In Taylor, they might as well just said moving to the Central Texas, Austin area, because what this does for Taylor is make it the Austin area, because it's a blip on a map. It's one of those no red light towns, right, that is northeast of Austin, right? But they wanted it, much like Hutto used to be, which is east of Austin. They wanted it to be a town, so they paid the city of Taylor and Williamson County paid a crap ton of money for there to be a loop that goes around 35.
I'm sorry. Hold on 1 second. Taylor is in Wilco?
Yes.
I had no idea. That is so far east. What the crap, dude?
I live in Williamson County, so Williamson County, and again, that surprises most people, but
I used to live in Williamson County, yeah.
Absolutely, he did. So Williamson County actually is putting up. Here's the deal they made to get Samsung here. Samsung is investing $17 billion, and not only have they've agreed to at least, once it's done, which is estimated in 2024, to hire at least 2,000 people, at least 2,000 jobs, right, with a minimum pay rate. So they made Samsung buy it's now they don't publicly release that, but their average pay for that 2,000 plus employees has to be above a certain range. They wanted it to make it upper middle class so that they could turn around for taxation, because they're essentially cutting their tax bill by 90% for, I think it is 10 years. So they promised Samsung a 90% on local tax cut locally.
92.5 points. For
10 years, right? So by making that job market upper middle class, they're going to get that taxation back from them, right?
And if I may just interject my personal political views here, I'm not, I have my views. I don't believe there should be a government, that kind of thing. When people say we want pro-jobs, small government, those people who say that clap when deals like this get made. But it's a multi-billion-dollar foreign corporation.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Bob from Taylor can't go open a factory at an eighth, a tenth of scale because of the onerous regulations, taxes, and regulations on him to open a factory that's going to hire 20 people.
Right.
And if Jim Bob can't open the factory, don't tell me about Samsung opening a factory and hiring 2,000 people. I don't care about that as much. I'm less interested in that than I am Jim Bob saying, I've figured out how to make a better duck call or whatever. And I'm gonna, and I figured out how to trap deer better, or we're going to figure out how to hunt wild, whatever it is. I don't know why I'm on a hunting thing.
Mm-hmm.
If he can't go open a small factory that hires 20 or 30 people and, pays for those 30 or 40 people, pay their mortgages, buy their groceries, buy trucks, what have you. That's less, because then the market is not conducive to that guy building a business, so he doesn't. But it's really easy to say we have this wonderful, beautiful free economy. Yeah, it's easy if you're Samsung and you're a multi-billion-dollar, multi-pronged conglomerate from South Korea. So much easier.
Well, there's got to be, look, every government in the world, every state in the United States is faced with this balance. There's about 50% of our economy that is small to medium businesses, right? So you have to cultivate that so your Billy Jim Bob can make his duck call and hire those 30 people, because that is literally 50% of businesses in America, any state, right? But then you also have to have these big deals like this, because it makes up the other 50%, right?
So here's what I'm saying. If Billy Jim Bob goes to the city of Taylor and says, can you give me a 92% property tax break for the next 10 years? They're going to get arrested because he's on a watch list now. He's domestic, you know what?
Here's what makes it even worse, and this is where people get really hardcore against big business and billionaires. Not only are they giving them a 92% tax break, inside the contract, they also guarantee that Williamson County will spend at least $123 million on the surrounding area. Housing, roads, commercial developments. So Samsung got them to give them a 90% tax break for 10 years and got them to agree to spend at least $123 million providing the surrounding infrastructure to support that $17 billion investment.
Which, to me, again, and I didn't want to turn this into a political thing. This is a great thing. I am so pro this for a lot of different reasons. But I just want to interject, and this is not, and again, I'm a narco-capitalist. I'm not a lefty, right?
Right.
I just want to raise a little bit of awareness to the issue that this is, and the people who will say this is great, it's only happening because Texas is a great country. And again, I use the word country correctly. And to those people, I just want to say, hey, your dumb cousin can't open a factory in this country. We cannot bring and I want local manufacturing in my nation, the Republic of Texas.
Mm-hmm.
I want more we can't have more manufacturing here, less Jim Bob and your idiot cousin Dave can open micro factories. And here's the other thing: 2021 micro manufacturing much superbly easier than it ever was, way greener than it ever was because of things like 3D printers and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's 50% of the economy, and it could be 80-90% of the economy.
Well, but right? This ties in, though. Look, just like Dell being here, and Dell's been here forever in Austin, correct, there are businesses that are created and have been created over the 30 years Dell's has been here in supporting Dell. There are companies that will be created by Joe Bob and everybody else that will support Samsung because from local. So this is a good thing for both. I don't get as hardcore about it as Danny does because I think there is a little bit of balance that goes on. There's always opportunity to be had. I think we do not do a very good job. To me, it's more about. There's always opportunity in my mind where Danny gets this opportunity thing. To me, it's about educating. I think we do a horrible job about educating people how to take advantage of those opportunities that present themselves.
I agree with you on that. I think it's both things, though. And listen, of course, my views are considered outside of the norm. They're not the views of Market Explainer. But we can't. There's no point in having a podcast where I don't talk about my feelings, because what else is the point?
Well, no, I think it ties in. I think you're exactly right. I think it ties in without, again, politically speaking, Danny isn't a narco-capitalist, but your views on business, and this is a business news podcast, your views, everybody's individual views on business directly affects a lot of different parts of your personality, whether it's politics or whether it's your personalized feelings or whatever. Those they all tie in together. And there are people that we go, hey, there's a Samsung's now going to build this $17 billion plant and Taylor. They're both kinds here in Austin, that some of them are going to roll their eyes and go, oh, great, another, you know what I mean? Another company coming in here and getting tax breaks and whatever, yada, yada.
And those same people were the people who scoffed when Toyota attempted to open their truck factory.
Right.
In what is now the Mueller part of Texas, or part of Austin, sorry, Mueller neighborhood. And I can't help but think it wouldn't be like Mueller would be a not as hipstery place as it is now, but it would be a place that, had a little more blue collar. And here's the other thing, like, you want a diverse economy where it's blue collar and there's a lot of opportunity for everybody. And the one thing that I begrudge is that for 20 plus years, the manufacturing sector, where the average guy goes to get a job, was hollowed out. And it's great that a little town like Taylor, Texas, now is going to have that. It's going to be 2,000 jobs. So it's all positive, right? I'm being solely optimistic. It's all positive. And all I should have positioned what I said as, hey, here's where we need to work on, right? Because a Samsung coming to get a 92% tax break, just throw this out there. If Jim Bob says, I'm going to open a factory with 20 workers, let's give him 100% off on his taxes. 10 years. Let's just give him 100% off on his taxes for 10 years.
Never going to happen, because Danny, the reason he's
That's the
throwing that
problem.
out there, Danny doesn't believe in taxation. That's part of what makes him an anarcho-capitalist, is he believes taxation is theft. And I only bring that up because that's why Danny is so freely with his give everybody a tax cut kind of thing, is because he believes that. Here's what I want everybody to get from this story and a couple of others out there.
I don't have a problem that Samsung got it. My problem is that not everybody else is getting it.
Right. I want people to
pay.
I want people to think about two things here. One, this means opportunity in Taylor and around Taylor, all of Central Texas, along with Tesla coming, along with that. These are all great things that mean there's a lot of opportunity in Central Texas for the next decade, right? So I want you to take that away from this. The second thing that I want you to take from this story, and about the same time the story came out, that, and again, this is going to rub some people, Bill Gates and his foundation is building the first new nuclear plant in an old coal mining plant on the East Coast, the old coal mining city, right? Yeah, so his idea is to educate what used to be coal miners in this dying city to now work in this new nuclear plant in the way it's supposed to be.
Let me just say this much. Whatever the guy, I have nothing to say. I'm not even going to say his name. I'll just call him Windows CE. But the Windows CE, as much as I don't care for him, I think that particular thing is good. Right.
Well, but Samsung going to Taylor, that one going to a coal mining city, we are starting to do a little better from a business standpoint, a big business standpoint, going, how can I put my business, my big business, in a place that's going to give me discounts, that's going to give me whatever, and I can create a workforce out of that and bring workforce over or whatever, and in places that it mutually beneficial. Right? That it doesn't seem all completely one-sided, right? It seems like, okay, wait a minute, that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Both from a marketing standpoint, a management standpoint, a money standpoint.
Right. No, I agree. There's only upside here, right? And I think this is awesome. And my only regret, the only reason this bums me out, like I said at the top of the story, was when I moved out to Austin and put the boots on and became a Texan, I could have bought, like I said, all of Taylor for $18. And because when I moved there and I looked at places to buy and I wanted to buy a place and I was being encouraged by my family, I had the money set up. They said, you should buy something. I was like, man, I could just go out here. That was at that time looking at the rate of growth in Austin.
Yeah.
This is before Tesla. This is before Samsung has been in Austin for a long time. It's just now that they're expanding to this manufacturing sector. They had another office in already, somewhere in Round Rock. I don't remember. But the one thing that Big Man pointed out, and for our local Austinites, I do want to stress is here's going to be huge opportunity to support Samsung's efforts. And you could build $1 million or $2 million business on the back of supporting Samsung, not break a sweat, right?
Yep.
I bet you I'm just throwing this out there. They're going to contract with some company to pick people up in Round Rock or Cedar Park and drive them out to the factory in Taylor. And they're probably going to be doing that because they're not going to have enough workers that live in Taylor that are able to commute.
Well, no, Taylor can't support it the way Taylor is. That's part of why they got Williamson County to agree to spend $120 million developing the surrounding. Because Taylor is like Georgetown. The average age of person in Taylor is much older, right? That kind of thing. So they're going to have to bring and create a workforce. That's all going to come from Central Texas, Austin, Cedar Park, Leander, Georgetown, Pflugerville, right?
Even San Antonio.
Right. So
saying, if you go out there and you develop, and I'm just suggesting, I'm throwing this out there, you could go out there and just say, yeah, I'm a van operator. I have 10, 15 passenger vans. I got drivers and we're ready to run a 24-hour, because let's just say this is more of an automated factory. It's going to be running 24 hours a day, whatever. You could probably build a $1 or $2 million business doing just that. Right.
Well, and if you own land around Taylor, I talked to a lady this week, 175 acres
She's a
within
bajillionaire.
within about 5 miles from where this is going to ground break, right? That
Does she want to sell it to me? I'll buy it.
Older lady and husband that have lived there forever, that have shared crops, right? Rotation, corn, potatoes, stuff like that, right? For forever, right? That last week, land was okay, right? $15,000 an acre, you know what I mean? Something like that. That now will probably, if she holds on to it until a little closer, right? Once they break ground and all this kind of stuff, it could be $50,000. I mean, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like hitting the lottery for her. If she can just, you know what I mean? If she's smart with it. So,
I have a friend whose family had bought a bunch of acreage out in Plano, Texas, in the 90s. And they didn't sell it until Toyota moved their HQ to Plano, Texas.
And look what that did for Plano.
Yeah, I know.
As an entirety. And I will also say this also not fixes entirely, but ultimately will help the problem where these people believe that we are dependent on other countries because of things like chip manufacturing. They're flat out saying that this facility will develop what we consider the future of processors, not outdated garbage. It's supposed to be smartphones, 5G, data center, high performance computing, artificial intelligence.
Yes, and I wholeheartedly agree that even if it's a South Korean company, bringing a foreign company bringing manufacturing to our country is good. I don't think the Toyota factories in the United States, in Indiana and in Texas, were bad. Mazda, Honda, Subaru, all of these companies have Mercedes, BMW, Volkswagen. Well, Volkswagen is in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and also in Mexico. But I'm just saying, they brought manufacturing here. That's great.
It ultimately is good, right? Americans want that safety net when it comes to business, right? Of being able to do things. This is how you do it. All right, I think we beat that horse about as much as we can beat it.
That's correct. We are going to move on to our next segment, but before that, I want to tell you about Big Man Gear. Big Man Gear is this guy's idea of a funny merch brand. You can go to bigmangear.com. It is printed and shipped by Amazon Prime. Jeff Bezos himself sneezes on everything. You can go to bigmangear.com today and get a shirt. There's some funny stuff up there, folks. Big Man rarely gets me to laugh or chuckle. Some of them pretty good.
Thank you.
Next story, just throwing this out there. It's a fact. It's undeniable at this point. The American conglomerate is dead.
No, it's not. This is, again, a Danny-ism.
Yeah. So GE, General Electric, will be splitting into 3 separate companies. Before Big Man goes on this is a Danny saying, tell you what. I think Forbes or Fortune, I want to say was one of those, put out a YouTube video a little after we put this in our show notes, but our show got delayed because of the holiday. One of the experts, in quotes, that they brought in to talk about it, said exactly what I said after I wrote the headline that it's dead, that the iconic American conglomerate is over. Now, I think that I don't think this means that vertical integration is dead. I think that vertical integration still is economically prudent. I just think when you have a company like GE that makes refrigerators and jet engines, I don't think that they work. I don't think that makes sense at the same time. You know?
Well, look, and Danny is right. I do have a tendency to have a different company. I have a different in thought process. This is actually about GE split in the same week. Johnson said it was splitting, right? So when Danny says a conglomerate is dead, it's not. Everything in business ebbs and flows. That's just the way it is. So the conglomerate's not dead. Malls are not dead. They ebb and flow. They ebb and they will literally they could all be Amazon fulfillment centers tomorrow. That makes them not dead. It's the ebb and flow of business. Nothing stays the same. In this case, you've got GE, a company that GE has been around for 100 and something years, folks. Okay, it's been around a long time. Yeah, exactly. So I was around its creation, help, cut that original, ribbon. Anyway, so like 1890 something, 1892, right? So over 100 years. And it really didn't hit its stride, which is crazy to say, until 80 years into that, right? The late 70s and 80s, GE became what we consider a household name, meaning they made everything from toasters, they had banks, they had everything and anything. They made parts for NASA.
Right. Jack Welch's era. Jack Welch is kind of the CEO that kind of made it into what we think of GE. Banks, the stupid, they have an insurance company. And here's the other thing I just want to point out. Okay. People have suggested, hey, I don't know, that that part of this breakup, that splitting into three separate, I think these are all going to be publicly traded companies.
Yes.
Has a little something to do with the fact that GE has engaged in aggressive, perhaps, Enron style accounting ?
Okay, so
and that I think that I don't want to be misquoting here, but Pershing Square's guy, I always forget his name, Bill Ackman, actually. So boring to listen to, but if you listen to the content of what he's saying, very interesting. But as a human being, he's boring. Has been saying this since like 2003 or something. Like, hey, their accounting doesn't make any sense.
Well, okay, you shouldn't mention Enron and GE in the same token. There's different things, right? So part of diversification, when you're a single company, and look, this happens in small business every day, right? Meaning that I'm a small business, or I own 2 or 3 small businesses, and one of them's doing really well and the other 2 aren't doing great. I shuffle some money around to make sure that these get supported and that one makes a little less money. That happens in small business every day. Conglomerates, as you say, have been doing this for decades as well.
Correct.
I have a very... yeah, exactly. The diversification, right? I have a product that does really well. It can cover for the cost of some other products that don't. Now, that was the thinking in the 70s and 80s and 90s as GE and Johnson & Johnson and all these other people that did a bunch of different things. That was their idea, was I'm going to be able to easily, if a product doesn't survive or a recall or whatever, I can compensate for that very easily. What they've learned, however, is that also increases their ability. In GE's case, they had a bank, right? Financial institution that was highly leveraged into what became the subprime market in the 2008, 2009, 2010 market, right? So, and you have a company that is tied in with everything that unfortunately just goes, right, completely belly up, by the way, right?
Right.
So, and that...
Hey, in the 80s and 90s, freaking Ford owned unbelievable amounts of different car companies.
Well, exactly.
Jaguar, Land Rover. The freaking Aston, as a car guy, it's extremely hilarious to see people with these little older, like 90s, early 2000s Aston Martins, and realize that they have 2 Taurus engines pushed together to make a V12. Aston Martin, it's like you got 2 Ford Taurus engines.
They were making up names of manufacturing lines, right? They were making up names that were the same thing, just had a different name on it, right? So that they could brand it differently and whatever. But again, they thought it was this diversification. It was literally the decade of diversification to get your toes into all these things, because they believed at the time, and this is what I'm saying about ebbs and flows about business, because business, like science, it should, as new information comes in, you should change how you think. It might change your business model, right? And the idea at the time was diversification was good. Having your toes in a lot of different things mitigated loss. What we found out is, while that's a great low-level thinking, that in big business, it increases your liability exponentially, right? So in Johnson & Johnson's case, which is a little weird, and I bring this up, Johnson & Johnson is splitting into different companies as well. Johnson & Johnson hit its own snag with one of its most popular items in history being its baby powder. There was a unfortunate There was something in their baby powder that was causing problems. It's gotten sued at a class action lawsuit, which, for whatever reason, perfectly legal. Johnson & Johnson was able to create a third-party shell company that now has all of that bankruptcy liability attached to it from its lawsuit, and that lawsuit is currently in Chapter 11. So
that's odd how they did that. Can I do that? Can I shift my liability from my profitable entity into a newly existing, like newly manufactured? I mean, that's great. That's legal.
That is apparently legal and it is done. So
I'm going to be doing that all the time.
I mean, it was only tied to, ovarian cancer and different kinds of cancers and stuff like that. But Johnson & Johnson no longer has the liability of that and is splitting into these new companies. So
I remember something sorry to interrupt you, but I'm more important than you are.
Sure.
Yeah. It reminds me of when General Motors went bankrupt back during the crash of 2008, during the great financial crisis. And I remember that someone brought a lawsuit, and the General Motors came back in court. And they sided with General Motors.
Well, it was sued by shareholders. Like me, I was a shareholder in the original GM. And then when GM came out the other side as a brand new company, as new GM, owning all of what GM owns, all of the manufacturing plants with the same employees, the same everything, didn't even have to come out the other side as a new company name, just GM, and all of the liabilities of the old company go into bankruptcy. They essentially did the Johnson & Johnson thing, and the shareholders like me got $0 for their shares.
Yeah. That was hilarious to me that General Motors said, no, that's old GM. We're new GM. You got a problem with your airbags? Good luck, pal. That's old GM. We don't care.
Well, so they're splitting up. Look, Facebook did this a couple of weeks ago, right? Where Facebook now is a subsidiary of Meta, and so all of these companies follow suit in this way because in this case, like one of GE's companies is going to be GE Power, which is going to house their renewable energy research and development and all these different kinds of things. If for whatever reason that company just falls apart, then it just falls apart. It will have no bearing on the other legs of what ultimately will be the GE universe.
Think of GE and Johnson & Johnson as blocks of cheese, and you've cut the cheese in different sections. You put some of it in the fridge and you leave some out for the guests. Now, if the cheese you left out for the guests gets moldy, fine. Put 3 other blocks. But this makes a lot of sense, especially in the context of Thanksgiving, cutting up cheese. But anyways, I just think that this proves one thing is that going forward, being lean, being flexible, and being hyper-focused are things that enterprise is going to be more focused on or is going to be leading towards, because we're a massive corporation with huge middle management. They can't be lean. And you're
it allows them to be very good at what they're doing individually, not instead of trying to be good at all, right? Like everything. So manage what you're good at and go from there and be good at just that. I think you're going to see a lot of this, but ultimately, I don't think anything changes. Meta still controls Facebook, and the way that Meta is going to control Facebook and Instagram and anything else that it owns. In this, GE is still going to run things like GE. This is all paperwork. This is why I say the conglomerate's not dead. Is the people that are involved in high level at GE are still going to be involved at a high level at GE. Mark Zuckerberg, or Zuckerstat, as like Danny likes to call him, right? Because he doesn't like to call any of these billionaires by their actual names.
You mean?
Exactly. Is still going to be involved in anything that he wants to be involved in, just like Bezos at Amazon and everything else. These high-level people are going to be just as involved in any of these companies as they want to be, regardless of how it's structured. It's all paperwork and liability. That's all it is.
And when he says paperwork, what he should say more accurately, it's all about shifting liabilities into silos where it's hard to. Now, I remember a situation where a friend had an issue with a car shop that messed up his car, like legit two other mechanics said, no, they screwed up your car. Now you can't drive
Mm-hmm.
it. Screwed. And he went to go sue them, and they said, well, technically we're incorporated in a different state, so you got to cross lines in this other state, sue us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that approach. And of course, listen, I learned that lesson. I'm incorporated across several different states and other countries. Why would I be incorporated in the United States? Come sue me in Panama if you got a problem.
Well, look, all of these companies. Look, we talked about liabilities, and you said this earlier. All of these companies are going to end up being their own publicly traded companies, right? GE Power, GE Digital, right? Whatever.
Two companies will become five.
Right. So what they're doing is they're taking all of their liability, and we talked about this on certain companies. What we talked about going, IPO or SPAC or whatever. You have to be very careful in investing. Are you buying someone else's losses? I think in this case, it's why it's become very popular, in my opinion, for some of these big conglomerates to split up. Is why take just one person's money when you can take three people's money with three different companies, and I can take all of the liability for GE or Johnson and Johnson or whatever and spread it out into these companies, and you're buying their liability into these, and they're just raising more funds. They've got three times the opportunity in this case to raise money in three different ways.
Instead of the BS being 10 inches high or 10 inches deep and an inch wide, it's going to be 10 inches wide and an inch deep. That's
exactly.
all they're doing.
They're just spreading their ability to make money.
It's what I would do. I don't blame them for doing this.
No,
if I was in their situation, I would also do this to the shareholder.
In today's world of how people are shoving money into the markets, and I had one company and I could fill out paperwork to take my one company and make it three.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I?
You'd be stupid if you didn't.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to move on to this last story. But before we do that, I want to tell you about workathomstuff.com. I created this website, Work at Home Stuff, because more and more of you will never go back to your office. You're going to be working at home. Nor should you. You're going to be starting a side hustle. You're going to need a desk. You're going to need a chair. Which chair and desk to buy? Work at Home Stuff answers that question. Workathomstuff.com. Now, this next story, if you're coming off the Thanksgiving holiday and you weren't arrested when you rented a car, you're lucky. Is it 165?
Danny's so negative.
Renters of Hertz vehicles are now in a class action lawsuit. They went to jail, some of them did, because they got accused of stealing cars from a rental car company.
Well, okay, so my question always is, and Mark gets on to me because I always, devil's advocate, try to see from every angle, how many of these people, just the devil, how many of these people actually have a point? Because again, and I've said this before on this podcast, my brother-in-law was a manager for Enterprise for a lot of years, and he would tell me these horror stories because I would think as a normal person, I rent a car, I take it back. I know that if I don't take it back, I'm going to keep getting charged. They're going to ultimately find whatever, because to me that's logical. However, he would tell me over and over about these horror stories about how people would rent cars and just not bring them back.
So I worked at a logistics center for one of the big majors, and it's actually one company that owns three separate brands. And at any given time, 10% of our fleet was missing, or unaccounted for was the phrase that they would use. And one time they called up, and I worked in the logistics division of the business. They said, okay, we tracked down 15 of the cars. It turns out somebody worked for one of the other rental companies, realized that there was just cars with keys in them that were not well tracked. And they all pull into the exact same bay at the airport.
Mm-hmm.
Here and there would take a car off the lot, go and park it in the cell phone lot, and have one of his buddies drive it to his house. He had, I think, 10 or 15 cars parked on his lawn from various rental car companies. He was just renting them out for 10 and 15 bucks a week. Buddies in the neighborhood. And another time they called us up and said, hey, here's a car that had been missing for quite some time. Police returned it to the location that was on the rental agreement. You need to go pick it up because it had a 45-inch TV in the back. And also, it was a literal rolling crime scene. And at some point, the police were like, "Hey, actually, we look at this, so don't clean it up." And I drove that. I got inside and I drove that. So
inventory management is obviously a big thing when you're talking about millions and millions of cars, right?
And so for Hertz right now, another reason you're seeing Hertz in the news is because it made an order to buy a bunch of Teslas. So Hertz is just coming out of bankruptcy. Last year they went bankrupt because they were just over levered and all this other stuff. We had talked about that in the episode. Now here's this unfortunate situation where when you really do the math, think of thousands of people trying to rent cars. 165 people got pulled over, and some of them were arrested. And yes, some of them lost their job. And yes, some of them had guns pointed at them. But is it really that big a deal?
Well, so here's what I found surprising in this article, that there apparently Hertz policy, and maybe hopefully this pushes them to change the policy, is that if they report you to the police, which is what you do when because if you're supposed to bring the car back on Tuesday and you don't, that's considered theft of an auto vehicle, right? They report that to the police. The part that I thought was really jacked up is Hertz policy is once they turn that over to the local police, if I call you on Wednesday and you've already reported it to the police, and I say, hey, I had the car for an extra day, I'm sorry, I worked overnight or whatever, here's my credit card, let me pay for it or whatever, right? They don't turn around and call the police up and say, hey, they called us and fixed it. They just don't. They let the police work it out.
Yeah, so I had this happen to someone I know. They came into town, they rented a van. The van had the license plate from a different state for a different vehicle. And and it was expired. The tabs were expired on the plate. My friend got pulled over. Cop said, not only are these, he shows them the rental agreement and he goes, all right. He said, here's the problem. I'm going to cut you loose. But now you've crossed state lines with a vehicle with the wrong plates and all this other stuff. He calls up the rental car company. They're like, yeah, we'll figure something out. He's like, yeah, but the problem is I'm driving this thing.
You're driving it. You're driving it.
And ultimately, the rental car company kept dragging their legs, and finally, they came and towed the vehicle. And then they tried to charge him for it.
That's crazy. See, but again, that's their default policies. And now, all of this is insane. Whether this goes anywhere, I doubt. Hertz probably just pays them whatever low amount of money they actually want, because there's probably 2 people out of the 165 that actually had a legit. The rest of them are just complaining because they kept a car.
Yes.
And a lawyer is calling up everybody all day long going, hey, did somebody do something bad to you? My favorite part of this entire story was I came across an article that was talking about this. And Danny had mentioned just a little bit ago that, Hertz went with Tesla to buy, I don't remember how many thousands of Teslas it was.
I think it was like thousands. I think it was 400.
Okay, whatever. The point was it was a big deal. It was a national news article that a rental car company was buying electric vehicles, right, to rent out to the general public, right, or whatever. But my favorite was this conspiracy theory. If you go to a bottom of a bunch of articles, you get to where a comment section on some, and some websites have them, some don't, but you get into a comment section, and I like to read through comments because I'm a Redditor, and some of the most fun things are in the comments.
You're also an insane person.
Your average everyday person's thought process on business just mesmerizes me, and one of them was this wonderful conspiracy theory that says that this 160...
There's 100,000 Teslas.
Okay, so 100,000 Teslas they're buying or whatever. So this person says that this 165 people is all fugazi, that it's all just smoke and mirrors. It's actually big oil and General Motors trying to sabotage Hertz buying electric vehicles from Tesla.
Let me tell you something. I love it.
That's what's happening.
Let me tell you something. That is the official story I'm going with from here on out. Right? It was big oil.
It's big oil. It's General Motors and big oil.
Who supplies the electricity for the cars that get plugged into the network. They supply the electricity. They went after, and General Motors who is fastly becoming the largest player in electric cars.
Right.
It was them. That's my official.
That's it, man. That's it. It's big oil, man. It all comes back to big oil. And this 165 person class action lawsuit trying to take down Hertz for that contract.
165 people in a class action is not as big as you think it is. It's actually pretty small.
It's really small. I don't know what the minimum number is. It's probably around 100. You know what I mean? For a class, it's small.
I have won. I have been in 2 or 3 class actions that have won. There was hundreds of thousands of us in one, and then there's several thousand in the other. I think I got $50 all around.
Well, if you have a TikTok account, you were just involved in one, and you ended up with like 70 cents per person in that class action lawsuit. So
that's awesome.
You should have definitely got an email if you're on TikTok, which Danny's not. Market Explainer is, but if you did, right, you got like 70 cents, with your class action lawsuit. So there you go.
Well, does that conclude our show? Should I get to the tip of the week?
That does conclude our show. What is your tip of the week?
My tip of the week, that if Karl Marx was alive today, he would run and operate an extremely mediocre flat earth YouTube channel. My tip of the week.
Oh my God. I don't know how we're going to do this anymore, but we'll see you next time, folks.
You don't have a choice. You're locked in. We're married.
He said it. Well, he said it.
Yeah, good luck, people. See you at episode 50.